Live. So we're gonna be doing some correlation. Okay, we're gonna correlate the gold mouse, right? We already looked at some stuff in the previous video about the connection in Alabama and Arkansas with the Olmec Aztec area of Mexico, right? And down in Colombia with El Dorado. The city of El Dorado in Arkansas is connected to the Golden One, right? An Indian king down in the South America area. Okay, so let's see. So right here it says major Olmec cities. Okay, we know Toltec is up this way by Cabada or whatnot. Then down here you got a city called San Lorenzo, right? Over here San Andres, right? It's like San Andreas or something like that. Okay. Let me go look at that one more time. So see El Manatee. There's a Manatee County in Florida. And there's a San Lorenzo and a San Andreas by Oakland, California, right? Also in Oakland, there's or near Oakland, there's a El Dorado Hills up by Sacramento, actually. Same area though. Okay, so now California, specifically Oakland, the Oakland area, the Bay Area. The people in the South, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, all them people and elsewhere, but I'm saying specifically in the South, they wear gold in their mouth. Oakland, the Oakland cats, a lot of people in Oakland, they wear gold in their mouth, and a lot of their people went there from Louisiana. Okay, a lot of people in Louisiana wear gold in their mouth. Now, who else wear gold in their mouth? The Mexicans, right? So-called Mexicans, so-called Mexicans, right? You see them older folks with their gold in their mouth, right? See the connection? That's the connection, right? I'm just telling you. You got see, California is a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother subject, see, because over there you got a bunch of king this, king that. I can show you some stuff uh, from California where there was a king putting the crown on uh, a European seller dude or this dude right here. Says in June 26th, 1579, ceremony of Sir Francis Drake being crowned with a headdress by California Indians, right? See these Indians right here with the short little fros, right? See the little fro right there? Well, we already went over the fact that Sam G. Morton said everybody was of a Negro, so-called Negro type, right? Negro stock, lighter to dark skin. So we already know that. So see, in California, they had kings out there. Now this man pulled up to a place called Point Reyes. That means Point Kings in English, right? Point Kings. So California is definitely rich with the copper color Indian folk, right? Aboriginals, Aborigines, original Americans, things like that. going into this stuff. Got all kind of things looking for. See the Olmec head. That's the Olmec. Looking for. Hold up. Hmm. It's in a whole nother file. Now this is. If you haven't seen this, see the island of California. See it? Now this is Califia, Queen Califia, right? They try to say it's some kind of myth and all this. They do that with all the stuff, man. They don't want you to believe in nothing of yourself. But see, this is a Aboriginal person, indigenous queen from California. They have a major. I was reading up on California earlier, anyway. So yeah, so that's where the gold mouth things connect, right? So that's we got more than the places, the names and the history of those names, the origins and stuff, how they connect to the indigenous Indians, right? But you have the people wearing the gold in their mouth still to this day. I mean, Louisiana, all through the South, down in Mexico, and still up in Cali, right? Same places. So it's all connected. I just showed you that. So now I looked up the Toltec Mountain in Arizona and the Toltec in down in Mexico. Come to find out, if you Google it and look up and do the time period, the Indians, the Toltec people in Arizona were in Arizona. I mean, not Arizona, Arkansas. They were in Arkansas first from 650, the year 650 of this time to right around 1,000, right? the 10th or 11th century, I believe, right? They left. They was dwelling there. They built that in Arkansas and was living there from 650 to the 11th century, right around there. And then they went down to Mexico and built stuff there. So it wasn't the other way around. They didn't go from Mexico to up here. They went from up here to down there. So I found that out about the Toltec. To spread that interesting piece of information right there, because you hear a lot about them coming up here, but I'm trying to find out. Okay, so now I want to switch gears and talk about something else Samuel G. Morton said, the cranium doctor who dealt with all the cranium, 400 craniums throughout the continents here. He said they was all of this Negro type structurally, you know, the remains, the bones and stuff was alike, except for the Eskimos to the north, right? So up in Canada. And then so we I went and found this book. It's called the collect something like this. Hold on, let me see. Suquamish tribe staging a protest against the terms of the treaty. Point Elliott at Olympia, Washington in 1864. Now that's 1864. Okay. They over here talking about a treaty in 1864 in Washington State, Olympia. That's the capital. Now, if you can see, it's hard to see, I know, but these people right here have very distinct cheekbones, right? Right, the bone right up underneath the eye. Theirs goes all the way around the side of their head. Okay, I don't know if you can see this right here. It's hard to see. Okay, so this is some more of them people, or no, this is the Coast Salish peoples, right? See how this woman looks like an Asian? This woman definitely looks like a straight Chinese looking woman right here. Look from the side. Salish, Coast Salish peoples, right? Now here's in 1910 a photograph of students in front of the Tulalip Indian School, right? One student from the school later recalled that Tulalip was like a military school. You need you lined up and marched to almost everywhere you did. Okay. So in this picture, mostly you see like Mongoloid type people and uh European looking folks, right? But right over here you see two indigenous little kids right here. Out of all these kids at this Indian school in the state of Washington, right? See up here it says the Coast Salish peoples, the Coast Salish, right? But they got two indigenous little kids right here. In 1910. See? See their faces? That's unmistakable, right? Right there. So 1910. Remember that. Here's some more of them right here. See? See these people? See what they look like? They're saying these is the Indians, right? American Indian rights. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So here's some of the see. This says a beautiful Coast Salish spirit canoe and wood carving, probably of Duwamish origin. Photographed in 1909, spirit canoes were used to symbolically retrieve the strayed souls of the ill. Wow. Okay. So you remember that from, I mean, that's that Sun religion. Okay. The thing about the retrieving the stray souls of the ill, that's part of that. Now you see these suns on these canoes with these drawings. There's an eagle looking thing, like maybe an alligator, fish. Yeah. Now, let's go and look at some of this. Some of the population, right? Population in Washington State by race. Okay. Let's look at this. Because I seen a pattern when I was pulling these out. I seen a pattern. So, okay. But it says it started in 1860. 1850. They started taking census numbers, right? Population counts. The Washington race and Hispanic origin, 1850 through 1990. So, okay. 1850, they said it was in the whole state 152 blacks, so-called black folks, right? In the next 10 years, that number went down. Somehow 120 something of those folks wasn't there no more 10 years later. Over here in the column where it says American Indian, Eskimo, and Aleut, or whatever that means, it says not available or non-accurate, right? And then all of a sudden they have 400 of them there. And then so on and so forth. You see how the numbers was more than the blacks, so-called black people. See the numbers? Not until you get until 1950 in the state of Washington where you get 30,000 so-called blacks, right? And you go on from there. But you see how this number of American Indian and Eskimo in 1990 is like sort of a big number, 80,000 of them. So they started really in 1860. See how I showed you in 1864 they was so-called protesting the treaty. But if you look closely at that picture, you could go back to it, stop, pause, and make it big on your screen so you can see it closer. But they all got the same clothes on, like I don't know, you have to make your own judgment. I'm showing you right here on this government document of population that they weren't counted here. See, in 1850, where it says there was 152 blacks in 1850, where there was no slavery, they weren't even counted, right? These so-called people I just showed you up in Washington. Okay, so then another thing inside of that document there is something we already went over, but I'm showing you that the census federal for the state of Washington, it says basically the 1890 census has been destroyed. The 1890 Veterans Schedule and Index are available at the Family History Library and at the National Archives. Okay, see, destroyed. 1890 census has been destroyed all the way up in Washington. See, that's because, like Samuel G. Morton said, they was everywhere. And then the Eskimos was to the north. Now, if you just went and made all this room by running these people off and doing whatever you did to them, and you brought these other people down out of the snow, It's the way I'm seeing it. But anyway, here's in Oregon, right, where they have all these other casinos and Native American tribes or whatnot. See here, they weren't even counted. So in 1850, there was 50 so-called 55 or 56 blacks, so-called blacks, and then in 1860, 128, and then so on and so forth, right? Which I don't believe none of these numbers. Don't think that. I'm just showing you where the Indians didn't show up until after 1860, right here. And the numbers, 38,000 or whatnot, that's kind of a high number for them in Oregon, just like it was 80 something thousand in 1990 in Washington State. Okay. So the state over from that is Montana. I'm gonna show you this pattern I seen. Okay, Montana. They didn't start taking count. I don't even. Yeah, they became a state very late. It says 1870. Okay, so-called 18,000 whites was there, and only 183 blacks. It says, and 157 American Indians or Eskimos. Right. Then their number goes up, drops down, but they keep heavy numbers all the way till 1990. Look, so-called 2,000 and something blacks was in Montana. 47,000 of those American Indian and Eskimos was in Montana. Another one I found very interesting here is this one. Okay, this is California's. In 1850, right, they're saying there was only 980 something blacks and 91,000 whites in 1850 in California. And again, in 1850, there was no count of the so-called American Indian Eskimos. But in 1860, there was 17,000, almost 18,000 of them, right? But only 4,000 black, so-called black people, right? Now, somehow, now you got to understand the significance about California is the gold rush of 1849. Well, they said 300,000 plus people went there from all over other parts of the continent. Yeah, this is the total number. Okay. See, total population in 1850. Everybody went there in 1849. You know, the 49ers, the gold rush of 1849. So in 1850, they're saying the total amount of people in the state was 92,000. You can go and double check what I'm saying. I mean, always do your research. That's what this is all about, figuring this thing out. So in 1860, they're saying there was 300,000, 379,000, right? And 323 of those were white people, it says. Right? Now look at the Asian over here. This is Asian and Pacific Islander in 1860. They outnumbered uh, Black and American Indian and Eskimo together. The Asian did, but they weren't counted the uh, the last census or whatnot. So they just It's a weird thing, these numbers. This is what they put out here, so see, let me see. So see how it says 242,000 American Indian Eskimos? And Biden, okay, so this is Colorado. This is the up north. I wanted to particularly point out the up north sort of states, right? So this is Colorado. In 1860, there was only 40 some 45 or 46 people in the whole state, black, of Colorado. Now you, and then at the same time, it was they saying it's 34,000 whites in 1860 in Colorado. Now, so yeah, and then no American Indian or Eskimo until 1870. There was 180 of them there, and it goes up from there. Uh, but you see how this number is only 27,000, and then 133,000 blacks, so-called blacks, in 1990. Why wouldn't these people's numbers been going up if well they went up from what, 180. Their numbers went up from 180 in 1870 to 100 years and 120 years later, they had 27,000. Okay, so black folks, so-called black folks, at the same amount of time went from 400 and something to 133 in the same 33,000 in the same amount of time. Okay, so what I'm not a scientist or nothing like that. I'm trying to figure this out just like everybody else. So I'm like looking at this, I'm thinking, okay, so I know we have a lot of kids, but damn, what's the look at this. 10 years went by and they had like 200 people, went up 200 people in 10 years. What's this down here? 1920 to 1930. What'd they go up? They went up what? 12 people right there. What'd they go up right here? In 10 years, they went up 50 some people. Something like that. 45. That's crazy. So now you see how like the numbers would be in the northern states, Washington, Oregon. I didn't show Wyoming. Did I show Wyoming? I got North Dakota on there too. You can pop back on it, but I wanted to go down here and show in the South how it went. Okay, here's Louisiana. Okay, so they're saying in Louisiana, 1810, mind you, the first parishes was started outside of New Orleans, that was kind of a big hub, kind of by the water right there. Outside of New Orleans in Louisiana, they didn't start making parishes till like 1807, right? 1811, they had no, 1811, 1811, they had a major so-called slave rebellion there, right? Then they was making parishes in 1811, 1812, 1810. Okay, so in 1810, they're saying there's black people outnumbered white people by like 8,000 people or something, right? But look, there's no Indians, no count of an American Indian or an Eskimo until 1860. There was 173 of them. Over here, 350,000 blacks was there, so-called, as mostly as slaves, so-called, right? But that ain't true. That ain't true at all. But right there, yeah, it wasn't enough of them there. That this number is incorrect, definitely. But yeah, see this. Okay, let me see. So yeah, uh, yeah. So these numbers, like this right here, they saying that they always outnumber everybody, which I just don't believe that's true. But you see how this number, 18,000 American Indian Eskimos, only 18,000, and then over a million so-called blacks there, 1.3. See how the numbers is in the South? Way different in the South than it is up there by that Canadian border. See, Illinois, 1,800. There's so-called only 183 people there in 1,800, right? And then no American Indian until 1860. There was 32. 10 years later, there was only 32. 10 years later after that, there was 140. And then the number went down in 1890, right? 1900, there was only 16. See how that goes? But look at all these so-called black folks. But you see how that is, right? See how it goes? Now, one thing you got to know about people of the ice is that they don't like that sun. So they don't really, they be up north and, okay, Florida, they're saying they were slaves there. That don't make sense to me out of all the warring they was doing. Uh, they did not have control of any of that to even, or any of this to register like that. See, they was fighting those Seminole Wars all the way up to 1858. So it wasn't enough of them. See how they wasn't there like that? And then, bam, they had a major increase from 1880 to 1890. Right? Then they start getting thick up there. But look, so-called blacks almost matched them all the time right here, right? But look over here. See? See how shabby the numbers get until you get up here? Then they start getting solid. Why ain't they solid back here when this is 19, 20, 30, 40, 50? Come on now. Go look at some of them tribes, right? that's there now, and they have a history, right? That starts, well, there was one of them in 1860, two in 1870. So, and then in 1880, 180, 1890, 171. Okay. So this is why they tell you lies about the Indians was killed off by smallpox and this and that and the other, because look at these numbers. It wasn't even there in the 21 Jump Street. They wasn't even there. No, these people was is see, remember the Dawes Rolls, the $5 Indians when they allowed them to go and do that? That's this 180 and 171 number correlate to that right there. You see how it's one and two, and then 180 in the 1880s. I think they did that in like 1887. They signed up for that, right? And going into of course, going into the 1890s and all the way up until 1907. See how in 19 decade of 19, the first decade in the 1900s, look, 358. See, that's because they was all signing up. These people over here, this column right here is the real deal for Florida. See, them the real owners of that whole place. These people right here. And no matter what's done to them, you see how they numbers went. See how they numbers went. They started at 16,000 up to 1 million. Okay, and you know it's more than that, right? Well, this is 20, almost 30 years old. Actually, these numbers right here. So, but I'm just pointing that out that people, people stick around. Like Arkansas. Arkansas had 48 native American Indians and Eskimos, 89, and then they jumped to 195 and 218 and 250, and then jumped down to 66. See how they numbers went in the South, Arkansas, right where that Toltec Mound is and all that. Look, now they saying it was 900 and something whites there. Yeah, but they wasn't counting all these Indians was there, because if you go look at the history of Arkansas, it didn't even become a state until 1836 or something like that. Okay, so these people lived on forts. Go look at the forts and stuff. You gotta study the forts, the militias and things, and see, not only see about your own folks and how that stuff went and how the tribes went in these different areas, these different states, and the wars and doing that. You also look at what they did, how they did it. So they become militias, take the land, and then become politics, politicians to set the rules and blah blah blah. Yeah, they have a timeline as well, and it correlates with it. But you see right here, 1810, there was no way they was counting up uh people like that. Now, these people probably lived with them as their servants or something. You never know, right? See how it says they were all basically all slaves type thing. Look over here. Then you had all these free people. Look, you had 600 free people right here in 1850, and then the next year you only had 144 free so-called black. So all of these was most of all these numbers up here until 1870, it says, or somewhere right after slavery or whatever, they was set free or whatever. But we know that's a lie as well, because we got documents that so basically they always needed them to work out in the sun, because they go out there and fall over, croak over. So they always needed them even after so-called the end of slavery. So they still needed them to go out there. So they had tactics for that as well. So they used tactics to keep them out there. I got folks that was born in the late 1860s, after the wars, and was born. The documents say they was born into slavery. How they was born into slavery, and the slavery, what it was signed away through the Emancipation Proclamation, right? It says it freed all the slaves in the rebellious states. My people lived in rebellious states, owned the plantations in through the 1900s. So uh, if that happened with them, I'm sure that happened with a ton of other folks. Okay, that's why they kept profiting. That's why my theory is when you look back, those all those lynchings and all that negative foul stuff they was doing happened after the Civil War, right? That's because they was using that as scare tactics. You know, you planning on 4 or 5 of y'all planning on walking off, going and leaving and going and living your freedom. They got wind of it, and then all of a sudden they done rip somebody's body in half down the street or something. You know, scared you up. All you want to do now is work. All you want to do is go to sleep, and then don't want to go down the street and deal with the racist folks. You know, so you gonna stay right where you at, and you know that's a tactic. They used other tactics too. Like folks that didn't care, that went out there, they had those laws to where they would lock you up for just having no job or didn't have an ID or you know something weird like that, and lock you up for 8 to 10 years, 8 to 10 years type thing, just to get you out in the field in the sun working. See, Arkansas, 180, 138 so-called blacks there in 1810, and there's just you can go look it up. There's numerous places in that state that's always have outnumbered everything. The blacks have always outnumbered everything. So, or so-called blacks, right? Indigenous folks. I'm showing you these numbers right here. Look, Alabama. In 1800, they saying 517 people was there. 1810. Yeah. It did not become a state until 1818 or 1819. They was giving them little pieces of the land, like 1816, you know, stuff like that, but nothing too major until later on. Let's see where they numbers went. Major jump from the year 1870 to 1880. They had a major jump, and so did the very next year. Every year after that, they had like 200,000, 200 something thousand, you know. But in 18, yeah, see, yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about this. Okay, so it's a lot of things that I don't even go over because you know it's a lot to it. But okay, so in 1800, they had put a ban in the late 1700s, maybe the early 1800s, like 1807 or something. They put a ban on any imports of slaves, right? So-called ban, right? So they wasn't bringing those shiploads after the late 1700s, right? Early 1800s. So this number starts off at 517. Where was all these people coming from? Okay, where was all these people coming from? Because you got to know, look, they jumped 130, almost 135,000 from 1830 to 1840. Now, you can correlate these numbers with, uh, like this is Alabama. You could go back and look at some of them, how the courthouses was being destroyed, the records was being destroyed. You look at some of those dates. and you like the county my people lived in, right? For an example, they didn't give them that part of that land, and they didn't in which they made a county. They didn't give it to them until 1836 or 1832, one of the two, right? But look, see how the number goes in 1820 from 42,000 to 119,000. And I told you there was no imports. Where was these people coming from? They were destroying the records and then coming back 10 years later or whenever, right? They destroyed the records in 34 or 33. And 6 years later, they come back and count the people and put them down as in 1830. They be putting them down as either Negro, NEG, or black, right? So on and so forth. You see where they bucked up every year, almost every year, 100,000, 100-something thousand type thing, close to 100,000. Where was they coming from, right? They would make you think that uh, these people was moving in and bringing them with them. No, go do your documentation. You'll see that your people was already there. They just had their nationality stripped away, and it's a slave identity basically. If you're in your own land and then you can't even be free, and you don't own anything, you're being told what to do. Uh, then it's a slave identity. Period. But you see right here where there's an absence of so-called American Indian and Eskimo all the way up until 1860. There's 160 of them, then 98, and then uh, okay, so 1851 was a law that said, I think it was called the Indian Appropriations Act, where you had to go off of your land and onto the reservation. Yet I don't see no numbers in 1850. In 1860, there's 160 of them. Okay. How could there only be, if there was so many of them still? I mean, that's 1850. How could it? Uh, See, you got to know it was a lot of them because in 1871 they passed another law that said they had to leave the reservation and go be citizens or something like that. So there's some laws, and then once again in 1887, the $5 Indian European settler signed up to be a documented Native American. So look, they had 200 in 1880. By 1890, 759. Okay. Oh shoot. Actually, they had, okay, it says right here, another 1890. Somehow they have two 1890s, one right here and one right here. The rest of them is all single: 1990, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 90, no, 10, 1900. Then you have a 1890 and then an 1890. The rest of them are all singles: 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20. So you see how there's two 1890s? One has one number and another one has another number. Correlate that to all of those censuses having destroyed records in 1890. And I already told y'all, them wasn't our records in 1890 they was destroying. Those were their records. They was coming back in 1890 as documented Native Americans. They had destroyed their regular, immigration or whatever it was when they came as settlers. The the pilgrims documents, whatever the pilgrims documents said. They got rid of those, and then bam, Look at these two 1890s right here. That's deep. That's I didn't see that before. I'm just now seeing it, so I'm a little excited about that because now I got some other things to go look at. But this correlates to now not only is the federal census at the in the census section of each one of those research outlines say that when you go look inside of the counties, the county. I mean, you had documents being destroyed in the late 1890s, in the 1900s, early 1900s, all around the time that they was you had a lot of things going on. They had the word that people were signing up to be Indian, right, claiming their nationality and things, but also you had like the Homestead Act or the where they was the allotments, land allotments type thing. They had it all in order. Like you know, they say, okay, you sign up to be this. Once your name goes down, then that's who you are. You're going to be chief. Chief Wooty Whoop. And then we're going to pass a law that says, you know, we're giving you this much land, type thing. So it's all there. So it's all right here. We're looking at it right here in the flesh. See, two 1890s with two different numbers on them. That's deep. That's real deep. Okay, look at this. Let's look at this. This is DC, Washington, DC. Now that's major, major black people, right? Let's look. So-called blacks, indigenous. Look at this. Now, look at this. American Indian and Eskimo, 1,466 in 1990. 300, almost 400,000 in DC. DC, what is that? That's not a state with a whole bunch of different towns and cities in it. That's one city. Excuse me, that's like one city on a landmass or something. I'm not sure. But look here. See who outnumber everybody there in 1990? Indigenous. Okay, indigenous. All of them right there. 399,000 in DC. See? Go back here. They saying in 1880 there was 2,472 so-called blacks and then 5,672 so-called white folks. So how'd this go? Let's see. So once again, the highest number pops off in 1890. Oh, there's another 1890. Okay. But it has the same number. It has the same number. So it ain't like a higher number there. That other one was, but this is just weird all the way around because I mean, yeah, it's weird all the way around. Look, only 1,400 of them. Now look. So in Illinois in 1870, after the Civil War, the white population went up about 500,000 people, 500,000. The black population went up 20, no, not even 20, 18, right around 18,000 people, so-called, right? Now, you remember they were saying how thousands upon thousands of blacks left the South and went up to the North to a better life, to places like Chicago and, look at this. 1870 to 1880, only 18,000, less than 18,000 or something, right? And then another 10 years went by and less than 10,000. Yet they went up, they went up almost 750,000 people. You understand that? That's that's inaccurate. Now let's think about that in reference to a southern state. Okay. So 1860 through 1865, the Civil War, then 66, Reconstruction or whatever. So they would have left. They got free. They would have left, right? See how it says down there, all of them were slaves. See, 111,000. See, in 1860. But look, they number went up. It should have went down right here. It went up by 11,000 people. Then the 10 years later, again, it went up by down there 100,000 and another 100,000. So how was it that they left to a better life, left the South, but all of a sudden the numbers went up? The numbers shouldn't have went up. The numbers should not have went up in the South after slavery. That don't make sense. It's a real document too. Trust that. It's a real document. Look, Alabama, okay, 1860, 437,000. 1870, 475. So they went up 40,000 people. And then a whopping 125,000 people 10 more years later. See? And then look at their numbers. Oh, we already looked at it, but yeah, see how 1890 it goes up to 1,100 people. And then the 10 years later, it's at 177 and 900 and then 405. See? But see how it's only 16,000 and then a million people over here? Yeah, that's, let's go look at South Carolina. South Carolina. So, see, so-called blacks outnumbered them over 100,000 people in 1850, 1860. Outnumbered them still by over 100,000 people. 1870, South Carolina. Numbers went up a couple of 3,000 when it should have went down in this slave state. It should have went down. But look, all the numbers, they stayed on top all the way till you get to the 1930s, 20s, and 30s. Okay, let's see. The number went down from 20 to 30. The number went down. Let's see. But yeah, you see, the number bounced up right there. 170. But see, it stayed the same right there. 173, 173. That other one was odd. It was very odd. See they numbers in the South. South Carolina, see 1,008,000. It should not be like that. It should actually, it should be, it shouldn't be that like that. That's no way. Virginia. Wow. Wow. Look, 1790, there was 300,000 blacks in Virginia. So-called blacks, right? We know they was indigenous, that they didn't come across the damn, so 300,000 in 1790, right? Okay. Uh, oh, went there. Okay. So this is the numbers, the so-called slave numbers. See, 12,000. Remember they were saying 12,000. Okay. So it's on the screen. Look it up. Do whatever you want to do. But this is the USA column in the red right here. See? So it said they said 20 people came in 1619, but I'm not seeing any right here. Okay. It says 800 and something came in between 1626 and 1650. Zero these 24 years, but I guess it goes every 24 years. That's what was going on. So by 1790, right here. Hmm. So total, they say in total, over the course of all these years right here, total, there was only 300 and something thousand, which I've heard that from other people that only they said 3% or something of the whole so-called the people that came from over there to over here, which that ain't even true. These numbers more than likely was people that was taken from the Americas and taken over to Great Britain, Spain, now Portugal. Brazil is over here. Full, it was always full of indigenous copper color folks. Yeah. That's why they got like 200 million indigenous people living there right now because they was always populated. I showed a map from the 1600s from a book that they was very populated back then, and West Africa was not populated like that. So these is the numbers though. Screenshot this, go back to it, check it out, go verify it. This is what is put out there right here. Uh, but on top of that, I mean, there's a couple other things that go along with those numbers, and that is the ban on wood in the 1500s, 1600s in Europe. Oh, here it is right here. Says in the 16th century, Britain ran out of wood and resorted to coal. It says, see, they was cutting up all the wood, using it as heat and all that. So they had a ban on chopping down wood in the 1600s and 1500s. Along with that wood ban in Europe, you got the hurricane season across the Atlantic, which, if you look into that, people can only travel on the Atlantic, on that part of the Atlantic, like 5 or 6 months out of the year tops. Every year there's hurricane season. So that'll let you know about that. But okay, so I think I got everything I wanted to get out about that. Don't forget about the what I showed you, the Coast Salish people, right? See, I pointed out those extraordinary cheekbones because if Sam G. Morton is right and they come from up north where the snow is at, even looking down when the sun is beaming real hard and that snow is reflecting the sun off the mountains or cliffs or wherever they was at, and they had to look down, they still was looking at snow, so they still had to squint their eyes. So uh, squinting the eyes make that muscle right there below the eye push those bones up. That's why you see some of those folks with some crazy, crazy cheekbones. That's because of squinting them eyes, and that stuff can be passed along. That stuff is passed along. So yeah, yeah. Um, and I showed you that in the mounds in Oregon that they had pulled out a bunch of skeletons of skulls with bullet holes in them. And that's just to say they try to tell you it's a mystery about the mound builders and they're ancient and long ago, blah blah blah. No, that's it. That's what the people were using uh the whole time. They was behind the Palisade walls uh with mounds back there. And, oh, what's this? Oh, this is an artifact from the Coast Salish. Uh, this right here. What I found this face right here familiar, and this thing on the head right here, like almost like one of them helmets on the Olmec head, but it could be like a little fro type thing that they cut the sides off. It just the face with the wide set mouth and the nose like that, and those big eyes. That don't remind me of like an Eskimo or nothing like that. But that's one of their artifacts. Okay, that's one of the artifacts. Showed you them gold mounts. See, this is the Tolteca statues down in Mexico. They went from Arkansas down that way, and then not the other way around. So, and then some leaving down there, coming up here. Now this is North Dakota's numbers right here by race, and they started in 1870. Right away, there was so-called 24 blacks, and then 813 American Indian Eskimo. See that? Wow, look. In 1890, they have that thing again, right? Where the number is 1890 and then it's 94 and then 1890 again, but it's 8,171. See? Now, that's deep because to me, uh, yeah, I mean, why did the numbers even go down right here? I don't understand how a number could go down unless I don't know. Not of the, anyway. So up north, look, is not where so-called blacks, indigenous people is at, but they there and always have been for some reason. Let me look at Montana. Montana up there by Idaho and Washington State. So you got Montana, 1870, from 21 Jump Street. You got 183 so-called blacks, and they outnumber these so-called American Indian Eskimos, right? From the start of the census taken, they outnumbered them. Why? Montana is way, way up there. And then somehow they outnumber them in 1890. But look, see how that 1890 number splits again? And bam, 11,000. 11,000 from 800 and something, 11,000 in 1890. Remember the records, 1890 records? So that's 10,000 count of Indians at one time. Mhm. Yeah, that's deep. Here's some of these Coast Salish people. Now, what do you see? Three women, right? You can't see them that well, but they're Eskimos. But look at these cheekbones on each of these faces. That's what you see hardcore. These are Asians right here with major cheekbones. They're Asian people, short little Asian folks with these major cheekbones right here. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. The 19th house in 1912. Mhm. Yeah. See. All right. So, yeah. Oh, this. Now, I looked up something on Oregon too, right? Because the mounds, the skulls and the mounds with the bullet holes in them, that's interesting, right? So, the fact that if you go and look, these people made a law, I think it was in 1849, even though the place didn't become a state until 1859, right? It was established as a state in 1859. But yet in 1850, it had 55 blacks, so-called blacks, right? Now, they put a law out that said that no blacks could come there, no so-called no blacks could go there, right? In the state. And but yet the numbers kept going up. Numbers kept going up. Somebody told me that they didn't let nobody go there, no blacks go there until 1920. Well, they always been going there for some reason, right? For some reason they was always there. You gotta understand, if the place didn't become a state until 1859, then they couldn't have counted everybody. If you go and look, a lot of the area wasn't even settled or established until later on. So how could they have counted everybody? Okay, that don't make no sense. But see how these Eskimos or these Indians, so-called American Indians, is look at their numbers. Look, the number 1,200, and then bam, almost 5,000. Remember the records. Remember the records destroyed 1890. Look here. Mm, it was the number went down 20 people in 10 years. What? Ain't nobody having no kids? Out of 5,000 people, how many kids should have been? I mean, I don't know the math or nothing like that, but uh, it seemed like on average, out of 5,000 people, there should at least be 5 or 10 kids a year. So you thinking 10 years, you thinking 50 at least. On the low end, 50 kids added to the number, but they had 20. They decreased 20. They decreased again right there. Decreased, increased. But look right here. All of a sudden, their numbers get thick up here. They ain't playing. When they get in these last little, which is 30 years ago, you know what they looking at right now, but probably about 100. But yeah, but look, the number's still. That's just weird. Yeah, it's real weird. All right, it's time to get off this thing. All right, so I'll hit y'all back off. Let me see what this is. Mine, look, mine is Toltec. You seen one that says Toltecas, Y Omega. Then you got the Aztecas. So all these folks from the same stock. All right, all right, all right. I'm getting up off here. Y'all have a good night. Uh, peace, peace, peace.